what's up? Welcome back to the Sebastian Scales Show. Happy New Year, wherever you are. Thanks for tuning back in. I went home for the holidays, and it was a bit of a trip. A lot of the things that we've covered on the podcast were just right in my face for winter break. And winter break, as if I'm still in school. Something about going home, oftentimes I feel like I'm reverting back into the version of myself that I was at that time in my life. But the whole range from like being a toddler and not being able to like care for myself or make basic meals to like the severe insecurity of like a prepubescent and pubescent and current. So it feels like you become a kid again. And many of the sort of thought patterns that you might have thought you weren't going to think anymore pop back in. And a lot of emotions come up that you know, are dormant when you're out living your current life, but you get put back into these environments and it's like, whoa, still got a lot to process and unpack, and it's all good, you know, but it was interesting. Like I got home, and I'm from a town called Bainbridge Island, and they have these ferries that you take it's in Seattle, and you get on a ferry and then you ride the ferry over, and I was on the upper deck where you can look out and see Seattle and see Bainbridge, and you know, you get nostalgic feelings, and it felt good, and I was like, yeah, it feels good to be home, you know. And then I got off the ferry, and there's like always a line of people who are getting ready to go on the ferry, and you walk by them. And I saw this guy who, you know, used to be a pretty good friend of mine. And I didn't really think twice about it. And I just like was like, yo, what's up, dude? Like, how's it going? And he was like, oh, hey. And, you know, we gave each other a big hug. He introduced me to, I think, it might have been his wife or a girlfriend. I'm not sure. He was like, oh, you've met, I don't remember her name now, but he was like, oh, you've met her. And I was like, for sure, man. Definitely met her and fully remember her. Nice to see you, lady. Totally just didn't know who she was, but, you know, in those moments, it's easier to just be like, yes, I know you. So anyway, we were chatting just briefly, and he was like, how long are you back for? And I was like, oh, you know, I'm back for a week, and then I'm going to the Oregon coast with some more of my family. And he was like, okay, dude, hit me up. And keep in mind, you know, we haven't seen each other in like 6 years. And it's not that nothing has happened that would make me dislike him or vice versa, but we haven't hung out. And it's so reasonable for him to just be saying that as a pleasantry and to just be like, you know, with no intention of hoping that I actually hit him up. He could just be saying that. But it was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, yeah, for sure, dude. Like, I'll be here for a week, so, you know, hit me up too. And he was like, yeah, definitely, man, hit me up. It felt like we were both trying to say hit me up last so that the onus would be on the other person to hit them up. We said bye, and he got on the ferry, and I got off of it, or I walked out of the ferry terminal, and I just started thinking to myself, like, it's not that I don't want to see this guy. It's just that you go home now, and like, I'm 26. Like, you go home and you have a finite amount of time there, and it's like you're not just going to see a bunch of people willy-nilly just, you know, because fucking why not? It was great to catch up in that moment, but we don't need to do more than that. We don't need to pretend like we haven't not seen each other for however long. It's like, it's not like I didn't want to see him more. It just felt like something that we didn't really need to see each other again after that moment. But instead of just like being happy with that interaction and just being like, that was cool to see him, I started feeling like this pressure to now hit him up because he got the last hit me up word in. It wasn't a lot, but multiple times over the course of the week that I was home on Bainbridge, I was thinking to myself, like, what am I going to say we'll call him Jeff. What am I going to say to Jeff? And like, I started like actually genuinely like worrying about what he'll think if I don't hit him up. And so I just started noticing myself. It would pop back into my head like, oh, you better start planning. It wasn't even like you should come up with a way to hang out with him. It was like you should start planning what you're going to say to not hang out with this guy. Just relax. He has a wife. Like, the audacity to think that this guy, who I haven't seen in 6 years, is just freaking out at home wondering why I haven't hit him up. It's egoically rooted. It's people pleasing, but it's also like, oh, this this guy who has his own life. I brought this up with my mom because I thought it was funny, and she made a good point that's like, this guy Jeff is on the outer cosmic orbits of like my own existence. Like, sure, we used to be good friends, but he's had a whole life between when we were friends and currently. And he's not operating in the way that he used to. And part of the reason I was tripping about it was because I remember in high school, I had this guilt associated with this guy because we were really tight in middle school. And then when we got to high school, we became less tight. And it just kind of, I remember his sister said this weird thing to me when I first got to high school. She was a couple years older, and she was like, don't forget who your real friends are. Like this, passive aggressive warning, like, you better stay friends with my brother. It was oddly threatening. And I think that maybe that's why it stuck with me. It was because there was apparent danger involved. But anyway, that kind of stuck with me, and I noticed that feeling sort of cropped back up where it's like, I need to make this guy not feel bad about me not wanting to hang out with him. Keep in mind, when she said that to me, I was 13. 13 years ago. I'm exactly half of my age currently. And yet those feelings, I guess I just never processed them because they started coming up again when I was trying to figure out, how do I politely say to this guy, who I don't even know if he really wants to hang out with me, but I'm assuming he does because he did 13 years ago. How do I politely say that I don't want to see him? So it was interesting to sort of feel that feeling again. And then as it continued to pop back into my head, I started to sit with it more and more. And even though I know and I feel that the solution to dormant feelings is feeling them, sometimes I still get wrapped up in thinking my way out of them or attempting to. I mean, this guy and I go way back. Like, I remember, like, we got high together for the first time. It was me, him, and two other guys, and we were in. My dad and I built this thing called a cob house. It's like a material, if I remember right, it's like hay and like concrete or something. I forget what it is, but we built this like little hut in our backyard, and my dad would use it as a meditation room. And so we all went out there, and I think we were in 8th grade. It was the summer before freshman year of high school, and we got some weed, and we got an apple, and we, made a pipe out of the apple with a pencil. And we put the weed in at the top and lit it. And people say that you never get as high as the first time that you get high. And I'd smoked before this, but I didn't get high like this. It was a completely different feeling. And I've also heard that you don't actually get high the first time. It's probably different for everybody. But the first time that I ever got high, it felt like I was living in a flip book where it felt like my life was lagging, and I would look at people, and then like my senses would like catch up after, like my vision, everything was delayed, but not in a bad way. It felt like we were all in a cartoon. And I remember just like, I hit the apple, and then I was looking at one of my friends, and he just started losing his mind, cracking up. And then that's when the flip book started, and the same thing happened to me. So me and these two guys are just bawling laughing, and Jeff's laughing too, but we're like not really aware. We're like, the three of us are kind of closer together, and Jeff's like on the couch. And after I have no idea how much time, because time was completely warped during that experience. But we kind of stopped laughing for a moment, and we started hearing, and we looked over, and Jeff is jerking off underneath a blanket. And he wasn't looking at us. He had his eyes closed, and presumably that's what he was doing. We know it was, but he wasn't. He was under the blanket, but it could not have been more obvious. And we looked over and we were like, "Oh my dude, yo, what are you doing?" And he was just like looking straight up into the ceiling. He didn't even make eye contact with us when we said that. He just opened his eyes and was like, he kept going, by the way. And he was like, "I'm sorry. It just feels so good." And, we couldn't really fault him for that. We weren't jerking off, but we, certainly had before that moment. And we knew how we were feeling in that moment and figured he was probably right. He hasn't done this before. And having jerked off high since then, I can't confirm. And I don't blame him. But we just went right back to laughing. And I don't remember if he finished, but I hope he didn't. I mean, I hope that he enjoyed the experience, but I hope that, you know what? Maybe that's okay if he did finish. I don't know. I hope he didn't finish into the blanket. Probably getting too much into the weeds, the detail weeds. Pun not intended. But anyway, so just some historical background on this guy. So we were good friends, and we were really tight in middle school, and then we got to high school, and his sister said that thing, and then that just sort of our relationship just it's not like we hated each other or anything, but we just started hanging out with different people, as you do. You get older. But I always carried this guilt, and I don't know if I would have carried it as much had his sister not said that thing, but I carried it with me, and that was what sort of inevitably influenced this pressure and guilt that I felt trying to figure out how to not hang out with him. So anyway, my mom brought that up, and it was like, it was funny to think visually, like this guy has had an entire life experience that I'm unaware of, and I'm operating as if he hasn't changed at all since I last saw him. Like, according to my reaction, he has done no maturing. He hasn't changed whatsoever, despite having a wife now. I knew that I was being ridiculous, but it was still kind of there. And it made me further sort of believe that these feelings will keep coming up in different ways until we allow ourselves to feel them. And it's I'm leaning into that more. I'm trying to see situations where I feel fear or sadness or guilt, whatever the emotion is, and just see it as an opportunity to let go and to become lighter, to have a lighter existence, to not cling on to the past emotional states or thought patterns. And so, as much as I am saying that now, I didn't really do that. When my mom, I talked to my mom about Jeff when we went to the Oregon coast, and but that week leading up until that point, I mean, I spent significantly more time than I should figuring out what I was going to do. And this is embarrassing to admit, and that's why I want to admit it, because it's a good thing to do. Embarrass yourself. That's one way to like quickly feel the feelings that you're worried about feeling. Is just be embarrassed. Let yourself be embarrassed and see what happens. It's all in your head. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be. But anyway, I didn't hit him up the whole week. And then I sent him a message on Instagram. Oh, man. Okay. Yo. Jesus. It was great to see you off the Off the Briefly Ferry. That's what I said. It was great to see you off the Briefly Ferry. I swear to God, I read this 14 times and missed that. I meant to say, yo, it was great to see you off the ferry briefly, but the Briefly Ferry sounds better, actually. Ended up laying pretty low with my family because of COVID. What a great excuse, man. This is awesome. Thank God you clarified with this poor guy who was absolutely panicking as to why you hadn't hit him up. Hope to catch up another time. Not really, though. It's not that I don't want to ever see you again, but it's like it's almost like a leading the person on. It's trying to let them down slowly instead of just leaving it alone. Like my whole interpretation of like, yeah, man, hit me up. That's probably wrong. I'm under the assumption that he is not going to be okay unless I send this message, which again is egoic. He's going to be fine. Merry Christmas, man. What a loving and heartfelt. Oh my God, he's got a kid. I'm looking at his profile now, and he's got a child who's 5. This father does not have time to be tripping about why you haven't hit him up when he's got a full family to take care of. He doesn't have time to go smoke weed and jerk off anymore. Maybe he does. I don't know. But I don't need to torture myself about this. He could not have more responsibilities. Like, I think I'm busy. He's taking care of a human child, baby, and I'm over here thinking to myself, this guy hates me even more than I don't know if he already did. But this is purposeful, you know, like, because I feel this way often when people hit me up and I don't have like a good reason to not hang out with them, or, you know, whatever the thing that I'm worried about is. Like, these things will continue happening until you feel what you're afraid of feeling. And here, I think it's like letting people down. But that's not what you're doing. And the other thing is that if I had hung out with him, it would have been great, I'm sure. But the stress that I would feel going to do it would not be conducive to like an enjoyable experience. Like, as if this guy wants me to hang out with him if I don't want to. Of course he doesn't. These people that are hitting us up to hang out, like, they don't want you to just be around them because you feel bad. So I think it's like, just tell the truth. In this scenario, I could have said nothing to him after we saw each other off the ferry, and that would have been completely okay. And he could have hit me up, and he could have, or not, and it wouldn't, you know, it didn't matter. But in my head, if you think about it too much, you create reasons why you need to worry. And so this is what I mean about the old habitual thought patterns. By the way, he hasn't read it yet. I sent this on Christmas night. He hasn't opened the message. That's how much he cares about me and my hanging out with him. So even if I don't have his number anymore. So even if I had wanted to hang out with him and I was like, hey man, what's up? Like, can you hang out? Like, even if I desperately wanted to see him, he wouldn't have seen the message. So this is one of those things where, like, sometimes, you know, I'll have an idea of things that I want to talk about on the podcast, but when I actually start talking about it, it just becomes even more ridiculous than I could have imagined. And the fact that he hasn't opened that is just the absolute cherry on top of this whole thing, that, like, no one is thinking about you in the way that you think they're thinking about you. So, you know, Jeff, I'm happy for you and your son. I don't know if it's actually his son or maybe it's his like wife's son that she had with somebody else. I don't know. Honestly, shows how good of a friend I am to not know that you have a son. He's like going over to Seattle to like finally have like some time alone with his wife for the first time in 5 years after taking care of this child. And he's like, let me just abandon that and go hang out with Sebastian. Yeah, it's all good though, Got to be aware of these things and gotta let them go. So anyway, the rest of the time was great. It's not like there were a lot of people that I would have felt this sort of obligation towards just because of how I was in high school. I was really social. I still am social, but extremely social, like to the point where I would basically hang out with people every day, different groups of people, and I think part of it was being an only child, but I really enjoyed that, but it became a burden a lot of the times. And I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I didn't have the heart to tell people like, hey, I just don't really want to hang out with you. I always felt like I needed a reason, but that's just like justification. It's like trying to uphold the image of ourselves that other people have in their heads, that we think they have in their heads. But like everyone's living their own life, and if you don't want to hang out with somebody, you're doing them a favor by not hanging out with them, because it allows them to actually put energy and time into people that do want to be around them, and it allows you to do the same, rather than just like trying to lie my way out of every scenario where I can't or don't want to hang out with somebody and trying to assure them that I would otherwise. Just like allowing, it's almost like preventing growth. And also just preventing authenticity and honesty, and like take some of the pressure off of yourself. You don't have to keep everyone happy. In fact, you can't. If you spend all of your time trying to keep everyone else happy, you won't be happy, because you're never prioritizing yourself. All the time that you have is dedicated to everyone else. So, this is a message for myself as well. But yeah, I don't know what it is about going home. I think it's just because especially for me, like my mom did everything for me growing up. And it's just so easy to sink back into those old habits of like not making food, not exercising. I mean, my shower routine was questionable at best while I was home. But I guess you just get around people that you don't feel the need to look good around, and things fall apart. So I'm trying to get back into the routines and rhythms that I had established before the holidays now that I'm back in LA. But yeah, I'm trying to sort of view all of these experiences as opportunities to grow and to let go and to not force relationships. Just because we were friends in the past doesn't mean we have to be now, especially when we haven't been really recently. It's okay. It's all good. I saw the people that I really wanted to see, the people that I have kept in touch with, and some other people too. And that was it. It was a restful holiday. I remember the first day that I was back in LA, I was driving on the street and I saw this homeless guy, and he was walking like right in the middle of the lane, right next to the sidewalk. And he was walking with traffic. So I'm like driving behind this guy, and the sidewalk just could not be closer, really. And I sort of had this, like, my initial reaction was like, what the fuck what is this guy doing? Like, is this just to send a message? Like, yeah, fuck you, traffic. My initial reaction was that I was bothered by this guy. I was a little bit upset and maybe a little bit angry. And then I was like, maybe he's on drugs. Maybe he thinks that he's on the sidewalk. Maybe he has no idea. So I went from initially, he's doing this on purpose, intentionally, and it's bad for me. He's hindering my life experience, so I'm mad at him for it. To a new perception of the experience, which is maybe this guy has no idea what's going on. clearly he's probably not in a great mental state if he's walking in the road. But even that is like a good jump to make to somewhat potential understanding rather than just immediate anger and assuming that I know what's going on in this guy's head. So that was the next thing, was like, hey, maybe he's on drugs. And then my brain made another jump to maybe he wants to get hit. And I was like, whoa. Maybe he fully knows what's going on, and he just doesn't. It's so bad for him right now currently that he doesn't want to be here anymore and wants to die. So it was from anger to understanding to empathy. All of these options are possible, and unless I'm going to get out of my car and push him onto the sidewalk or talk to him about it, I'm not going to know. But in any scenario like this, or just any moment really, our perceptions are completely up to us. We can decide to feel and think however we want about this person or people or whatever's happening in our experience. And it was so much more fun isn't the right word probably, but in many scenarios it would be more fun to view things in certain ways. But I felt a lot better. I felt a lot better thinking about how maybe he wants to die. Jesus Christ. That's not how I meant it. I think you know what I mean. Basically, just I felt better knowing that maybe this guy isn't doing this just to fuck with me. Maybe he has other things going on that I'm not aware of, and maybe I can let go of any sort of anger that had initially bubbled up because I don't know, and until I know, I'm going to let go. And even then, when you do know, you can still let go. But it was like the different stages of grief in 30 seconds. Oh, I also thought that maybe he's blind. And then I was like, maybe I should help this guy. I didn't do that. I drove around him. But, maybe that's on me. Maybe that's my next stage, is to go from understanding and empathy to action, trying to help the person. I don't know. But I hope he's doing well. Put yourself in other people's shoes and you get a lot better of an understanding, a hypothetical understanding of what might be going on. But it certainly allows you to feel less negative emotions towards the person. And all of that just happened in just such a short period of time. But rather than just being like, this guy, get out of the road, she made me turn my wheel for a moment instead of holding on to that. Because I think that's part of the ego as well, is that the ego likes to feel that way because it feels superior. It's like, I would never do this, and you're bad, you're stupid for doing this. It's the tension and the anger boiling. We don't have to feel that way. That is, in this moment, that was quite literally a choice to view it that way. And maybe the more we become aware of these things, the more we can actually choose. And maybe we'll just start defaulting to understanding instead of needing to think our way to understanding. So maybe that's what I'll try to work on. It's like, let's see the best in people immediately. Until you give me a reason to not think highly of you, I'm just gonna do it. Because me not thinking highly of you or thinking that you're shitty or stupid or something is really, those feelings are in me. I might feel them about you, but they're inside me. So yeah, some scattered thoughts in this episode, but I hope you've enjoyed listening. And I will see you in the next one. Happy New Year. I hope this is the best year you've ever had. And that it just keeps getting better and better. Because why not? All right. Peace.